bunch of slack-jawed faggots around here.
Well, good morning. Doing a video response to Sauvage, the Great Savage, Epic Cafe. How you doing? Those are some very interesting anecdotes you were relaying about your grandfather and father and their foray into the naval arts, if you will. Now, I would like to postulate that I agree with you in many respects. One being, the struggle is real, bro, and that people before us had a very real struggle. I mean, let's just go to the days of the colonists. If you're white and over here, it means you had to get on a boat. Your people had to get on a boat hundreds of years ago, and a third died on the journey, and another third died on arrival. And it was very, very bitter and rough upon getting here. In fact, one of the tools that everybody wanted when coming over here in the days of the colonists was not a rifle, dear boy. No, everybody wanted an axe because there were so many trees. And there were bitter days of famine. In fact, colonists were engaging in cannibalism. It was so bad. They found remains in what would be considered, a dump by our standards of, in fact, it was an article that I read about a young girl who had been, cannibalized, and they were studying her skull, and they were noting how the majority of the fractures against her skull, where they were getting at the fatty brain tissue, was all in the back because they couldn't bear to actually look at the face while they were engaging in this behavior. And their speculation that her own family wouldn't have done this. This would have been where, okay, one family has a young boy, we have a young girl, we're going to swap, and then we're going to engage in this very I don't even know if I have a word for it, but terrible behavior that is either going to, if we don't, we're all going to die. And if we do, we're going to be severely marked for the rest of our lives. And so I have no qualms that earlier generations did not struggle. But I think we also have to appreciate that as we moved away from the days of the colonists through the Civil War, and let's get to the westward expansion, the reward for your investment was much more evident, and the lack of government intrusion in many respects was much more evident. I mean, I purchased a house not too long ago that was built in the early 1900s, along with all these other homes that were built in the early 1900s, 1920s. And there's a term for them, craftsman homes, because you could just look in a catalog back then for what it was, look at the pictures, and buy the home, and it would show up on pallets, and you could build it yourself. Could you do that today? Hell no. I mean, just the cost of a permit alone to ask for permission from lackluster individuals called government employees is obscenely expensive. Backwoods made a comment in a recent video of You know, the boomers enjoyed themselves, and can you blame them? No one's blaming the boomers for enjoying the good times. What we're blaming the boomers for is pulling the ladder up on the later generations and making it to an age where they have no fucking wisdom or historical perspective on how easy they really had it. Was there struggle? Sure. There was conscription for fucking Vietnam, and now we know that Vietnam was based on a total fucking lie. Yeah, they had some gas lines because of the shortages, but overall, they had the best of what America had to offer, meaning that there was opportunity galore. And for a lot of boomers, all you had to do was fucking show up and fill out the form. If you weren't a total fucking dickbag, alcoholic, cigarette smoking, philandering jerkwad, the country was open for you. Now, you're saying, was it easier? Oh, well, it's easy. You know, you're asserting that, oh, we have all of this access to consumer goods now, and, you know, this, that, and the other, and this is somehow easier. Is it easier? I mean, it's definitely easier for young women to engage in online prostitution. It's definitely easier in getting access to some, top-end Sinsemilla or indica. You don't have to go searching for, someone who can get you a half lid of some grass that isn't filled with sticks and stems. Sure. But what we have to deal with now is a government that is no longer serving the people that it was, essentially feeding off of. The government no longer really cares about your benefit, because if they did, they would not be flooding us with Mexicans, with Middle Easterns, with Indians, and then calling you a bad name with a hard R when you're pointing out that, wait a minute, why is it that only certain countries are expected to be diversified and accept the huddled masses from afar, when the people that are now arriving here are engaging in very real nepotism? And fuck all what Snedmeister has to say. I don't even know that he can form a coherent argument that isn't tailored by the fucking state, right? Right? Oh, it's hypocritical for you to point out that they're engaging in behavior that favors them, right? Everywhere that these people are coming from, they're not diversifying their ranks. No, on the contrary. They kicked out all of the British colonials years ago, and now they want more, right? Look at South Africa, right? Land appropriation, and then they want to come here, and if we say, well, wait a minute, you got that over there, hey, you're a bad name with a hard R. No. It's much more difficult now because of the panopticon, because of the digital trace that follows you everywhere. It wasn't too long ago that you could do some real damage and, rob some bankers and then disappear into the ether, show up in a new town, fill out a simple form, get a new social security number and a new name, and then create new lives. These stories are being found all the time about men and women who engaged in some criminal behavior, skipped town, and started a new life. It's very difficult to do that now. And one of those reasons is live scan technology. Your fingerprints follow you. You got databases. And so, yes, the struggle is real everywhere. However, back then, your grandfather and father didn't have to go up against groups of people who were graded on a curve while they were not. Didn't have to deal with nepotistic behavior the way that they do now. Case in point, I was talking with an aunt the other day, recently retired from a school system. And she was talking about how since when she was getting close to retirement, she started to notice something, that all of the Mexicans were engaging in very, very nepotistic behavior, that if Whitey were to engage in it, it would be called racist and xenophobic. But when Mexicans do it, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about being called a racist or a xenophobic. And they will hire their less qualified familia over a qualified individual. And she was saying that, once they would hire a Mexican, pretty soon it was a cousin, an aunt, a brother, a sister, somebody that they knew would get in, and the ranks started being populated with Mexicanos, right? Not the native heritage Americans. And you're seeing this in industry everywhere. One being the CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations. It's predominantly Mexican. And when you start seeing the classes for the academy, you know who the token is? It's the token white boy and the token black kid. Because Mexicanos are very racist themselves. Maybe you don't hang out with Mexicans. They are. You know who else are really racist and unabashed racist? Asians. You know who else are unabashed racist? Indians. So this whole term of egalitarianism and meritocracy, those are white people words, bro. And now you've got a dwindling number of heritage American kids going up against hordes of unabashed racist and xenophobes that don't give a shit. Look at what happened to Xbox, right? Had some boss babe Sanjay Patel fire all of the domestic American workers and programmers. And what'd she do? They got all the H-1B visas now in there. And what's their reasoning? Oh, it's just easier to work with these people because I understand them and their culture. Bro, the country has been stolen from heritage Americans. And the forefathers knew this, which is why they put in the early documents, hey, we only want Europeans coming over here. Because if Americans are not careful, if Americans are not vigilant and stop giving a fuck about being called ugly fucking names, they're going to wind up homeless on the land that their forefathers conquered. That's all I got. And I think maybe it's time for Whitey to wipe the sleep from their eyes, reignite that American spirit fire, rekindle that friendship with violence, and realize that you will get no quarter and no mercy from the hordes that you have allowed in, so you can cloak yourself in the warm feelings of warm and fuzzy and some pseudo-contextual interpretation of Christian ideology. Whew! Man, it is early. It is early, but you know what helps in these early morning hours? Having a good espresso machine like the Breville Barista Pro, and having some decent beans, like Brazilian. I mean, when we're talking about coffee beans, right now I'm liking that Peruvian flake and that Brazilian. You know, they got some good beans coming out of there. You know, you got a nice half and half, steam it up, pull a nice double shot with some like beans you pulled out of the freezer that were fresh roasted. It kickstarts the morning well, right? Gets that fire going. I hope you guys are well. Salvage, I always appreciate the electronic video conversations that we have on here. So, pal, I hope you're doing well. Shafe, I hope you and the fam bam are enjoying the pool, because I know it's fucking hot where you are. And Backwoods, you big Norsky, I hope you're doing well too. Where's Slattery at? Anyway, be well, gentlemen.